My name is Daryl. I've got about 90 minutes scheduled for today. We usually go over that a little bit, which is fine for me, but we'll try to respect your time and get done on the schedule. If you have any questions along the way, I'll keep an eye on the chat. So if somebody wants to type them in chat and go to meeting there, if Brittany or whoever wants to convey messages, that's fine. Or if you just want to speak up. But I'd like to avoid getting off on the weeds on side discussions. I want to stay on the agenda as much as I can. So basically what we're doing, we do things a little reversed. Normally I do a course building 1 first and then go on to site admin, but just because of your needs, we did site admin 1 first. So today we're doing course building. So this is all going to be working inside of a course. We're looking at activities and resources and putting courses together and how the course is laid out and all of that stuff. So this is all about courses. So we're going to go over the just the layout of a course and kind of how it's put together, dealing with a Moodle course and how to get into editing it, the activities and resources that we can add to a course and use. We're going to add a few real examples, just kind of see how they're showing up. We're going to try to do this thing called a progress bar, which is a little bit of a kind of a gamification tool, which is related to completion tracking. And then we're also going to look at this one that's kind of a Swiss Army knife of course design, which is called a label. You'll see why. So that's kind of the outline of what we'll be doing. So I'm in here in your full site. So what I'm going to do in this one, and nope, this one. So this facilitating learning in synchronous environments is a mouthful, but we use this course. I don't know who put it together years ago, but it's just kind of a broad spread of a lot of different things that we use in a course. So it's a good kind of working example of stuff that we play with. So the first thing I'll show you here, you guys are using a theme called Boost that is what's called a 2-column layout. So over here on the right, you have your main column, if I highlight that. So this is like where all of your learning content resides. Over here, you have this right-hand column, which is, I can't select it, but anyway, it's blocks, right? So each one of these you can see is outside of the shaded area, and you have these different blocks that can present different things, and I'll show you how to add or remove some of those. And then over here on the left, you have this persistent column that doesn't scroll with the course, but it contains various menu items that will change based on a couple of things. One, it'll change based on the context of where you are. So you can see right now, I'm at a course. And so the top level of this is showing course-related items. So you can see I've got information about participants, grades, all the topics. If I scroll down, then I also have home, dashboard, calendar, and such. And then down here, I have site admin. So some of this is here because I'm looking at the front page of a course, and some of it is based on the fact that I'm a site administrator. But if I was to go into, let's say, this forum, for example, then you'll see the page reloads, and some of these things over here might change a little bit. Now you can see I'm looking at Unit 1. If I was going a course or a quiz, it might change a little bit more. And then also the breadcrumbs here will kind of change to give me an idea of where I'm at in the course. So that kind of gives you a general layout of where everything is. If you guys stick with the Boost theme, then this general layout will stay. If you switch to another theme that's more of a traditional 3-column layout, then you don't have this side thing. Instead, what you have is a center column like this, a right-hand column like this with blocks, and then you have another column of blocks on the left. So you have blocks, content, and blocks. So that's what's called a 3-column layout. Also in those 3 columns, you have the ability to hide or minimize these blocks. They would have a little button over here that you could click on, and it would push the blocks over here on these left, but the Boost doesn't do that. So depending on what theme you settle into and how it's designed, the overall look and feel may change a little bit. All right, so assuming you have the permissions to do this, we're going to go into a course and we're going to start editing it. So there's 2 things when you look at editing a course. You edit a course's settings, and that's things like its name, its layout, things like that. When you edit the course itself, that's editing the content. So you have editing settings and editing content. So in this Boost theme here, you're in the older version of Moodle, this will look a little different, but in this Boost Campus theme, there's a little gear up here that if you have permission to do this action, you'll see this gear. So I can either edit settings or I can turn editing on. If I edit settings, we'll do that first. Then what I'll see is all the information about the course itself. So we're just going to breeze through this a little bit. This same screen is what you'll see if you create a new course. So if you have the permission to create a course, this is the first thing you'll see, except it'll all be blank. We also covered something inside admin called course default settings. And there's things like layout and number of topics and such that a site admin can set as a default. When you create a new course, you may have some things pre-filled here. You can still change them, it's just a starting point. So in this case, we've got the course full name. So you can see that's the Facilitating Learning mouthful, which shows up in a couple places, mainly here. It also shows up in a list of courses and categories. So if I come up to your Iḻisaġvik site again, then that's the full name of the course right there. So it shows up in a few different places. It also shows up in the breadcrumbs, the short name is what shows up in the breadcrumbs. So in this case, we've got the full name both here and here. So you can see in the breadcrumbs, we've got this all spelled out. This short name is a little different because it has to be unique to the site. So you can have all of your courses named this, but the short name has to be unique. So I'm just to show you what happens here. I'm going to go FLSE just to change the short name. Right now we only have one course category, which is miscellaneous. But if you had other categories set up, you could say what category this course belongs to. This list might be limited if you are a course creator or manager or teacher at a category level. So if you have category A and category B and you're a course builder in A, then when you go to create your course, you won't be able to select B as the category because you don't belong to it. So if somebody says category B is the course and you can't get there, then it's because you're not in the proper category. This one here with a new course is almost always the first thing I change because if you're building a brand new course or starting, rebooting, or whatever, most likely you don't want the course visible. So what this means is show or hide is that students can see it. Anybody who doesn't have the capability or permission to see hidden courses will be affected by this. And so obviously with a brand new course, you're going to want to hide it because it's not ready yet. You don't want anybody to see it. But coming in and editing settings on, the quote unquote launch date or whatever, that's the same as coming in here and saying show. That's kind of like launching the course. You also have a course start date. This thing is only relevant if you are using it as a trigger point for other things in the course that run on a fixed schedule. So an example might be a weekly course that starts on January 9th of 2019. Like the course start date, you might say it begins on January 9th, 2019, and then you set the course up in a weekly format, then it will say week 1 is the 9th, week 2 is the 16th, and so on. You can also put an end date if you want. If you're in an asynchronous environment, where this is called synchronous environments, if you're dealing with asynchronous, where the course is kind of always open, students come in and out, then this date doesn't matter. But since you're a college, this date might matter. So you'll just have to look at it based on your course design. This could be the first day of the class, first day of semester, maybe it's a mid-semester class or something. So just keep that in mind for when you're building your course. The course ID number is not required. It's just another identifier you can use for a course. Maybe it matches an internal catalog number or something that's a little bit more cryptic. Say it's CB101A or something like that. That wouldn't make sense to somebody compared to what the short name might be. I've also seen systems that work with an external thing where the course ID number is used to automatically enroll people through an external database tool or something like that.
That's what we do, Daryl.
Yeah, so Don't touch that field. So the next section down here is a course description. I'll show a couple of things here. One, if you in Moodle anywhere, you'll see these little question mark bubbles all over the place. They're little help snippets. They're not as in-depth as the Moodle docs, for example, which, by the way, if you're not aware of it, docs.moodle.org is like Moodle's online instruction manual, right? Anything that you're looking up in the future, kind of how-tos, basic stuff, set up your course, for example, you can see there's all these things in here about different parts of the site that you can follow along with. Not nearly as good as me. So in this case, you can see the course summary is displayed in the list of courses. Again, that's here. So you can see this text right here comes from this. So if I just chop that off, for example, we'll see the effect later, so I'll do that. This also can show up in a course site description block, so you might want to display this on the course's front page. You want, because of the way this is used, you want to keep this fairly short and succinct. This is not where you put your syllabus. This is like, 1 or 2 paragraphs at the most, or maybe just a sentence or two. So it's just a little summary. You don't want it to be huge. Because you can see here, if you had 10 courses and each one of them had 5 paragraphs, this front page would get gigantic. While I'm in here, I'm going to show you this little content editor. This is pretty typical of any kind of online content editing tool. You might see it in like things like WordPress and such. So we've got basic formatting stuff up here about changing the heading level of content, kind of its style, bold, italic, bullet list, numbered lists. You can pull things like this and hyperlink them, so you can click a little button and say a URL that you want it to point to. You can break the hyperlink, which is the little break chain link there. You can insert a picture. So if I click this little button, it's like, what's the URL of the picture? Or you can go into the Moodle repositories. You want to make sure you put your, this is called an alt image. So for ADA compliance, or for somebody who can't see the image, this is a picture of a horse or something like that. You can adjust its alignment, that sort of thing. Pretty much the same thing with video. So you can pull up a YouTube video or something here, for example. You can also bring things in from something called warp wire. I'm not sure exactly why this doesn't work, but normally it would tell you to warp wire. But anyway, I don't use that. And then this is just managing files. So if you want to add a Word document, for example, it says, welcome to this facilitating course. Click here to download the course outline file. Then you can do that, and it'll create a link to that file that the person can click on. You can come over here into this this one, and expand it and get a second row of tools, which is more formatting, alignment, indenting, and dedenting, I guess you call it, outdent, yeah. You can add characters, you can put in a table, you can clear all the formatting, undo and redo. Yeah, it's quite a bit different than the 2.8 version. It's a totally different editor. You've got this accessibility thing. So if accessibility is something you're dealing with, you can put your content, run this tool, and see if it'll work for things like Shark Reader and such. The Screen Reader Helper. And then this one is probably the most useful and maybe dangerous. You can switch it over to a code view. So if somebody gives you something that's raw HTML code, you can paste it right into here. An example of that would be, I'll give you a little kind of, pop this out over here. So I'm going to go up and grab a random YouTube video, but let's pretend that an instructor decides that he wants to do a little like introduction of himself to his course. So he pulls out his phone, he records a little 2-minute video welcoming everybody and puts it up on YouTube. So then you can, so this is just the top YouTube video right now. So if I go into YouTube and come over here and click this little share button, then I can click this one that says embed, and it switches over to this code right here. So I can take this code, copy it, come back over here into my course. So I'm in the code view, right, by clicking this little button here. I'll paste that in, turn it off, and there's my YouTube video. So I'm going to modify this a little bit because it's kind of big. So I'm going to come up here and say 250 by 115. So there's my little video, and I'll just leave that in place. So now I've come down here, I've got course summary files. So you can have course summary content, or you can drop a file in here. Like I said, if it's bigger, this could be your syllabus or something. So the next section down here is the course format. The ones you have built in are called grid. I'll skip these, but you have topics and weekly. Topics and weekly are similar in that they're divided into sections. It's just that one is called, each section is called a topic, and in this one it's called a week with a date on it that is based, a date range on it that's based on what you set as the start date up above. You have single activity format and single topic. So a one topic format is just like topics, but there's only one. So you're not separating things into sections. Or you can have an entire course based on a single activity. That could be a single SCORM, a single final exam, a single lesson, for example, things like that. You have social, which is more geared around social interactions, forums, and groups and things like that. And then you also have this one called a grid format, which I'll turn on temporarily so you can see what it does. It gives me all these sections down here. So instead of having a course that is laid out top to bottom in sections, you have these big kind of thumbnail placards that indicate each section, and they're set up in a grid on the page. So I'm going to switch this back to topics format. My stuff is still there. Down here, I've got a thing that says, if a section is hidden, how do you behave? Does the section show itself, but it's collapsed, meaning I can see its name, I can see its description, but I can't see anything inside of it? And by I mean as a student. Or is the section completely invisible? I don't even know it exists. That's totally a course design decision, depending on what it is you're trying to achieve in the course behavior. This kind of says navigation. So if I have a course with 10 sections, do I have one page with all of the sections top to bottom, or do I switch it so that there's one section per page? If I do this, then I go to the course and I'll see the sections, but I won't see the content. Instead, what I do is then click on a section, then I'll see the content for that section, and then to the left and the right at the bottom, I'll have navigation links that go forward and backwards through the sections. So this one is helpful if you have a course that's really big, has a lot of stuff in it, kind of helps you avoid the big scroll of death thing. But if you have a course that is 10 sections, each section has a lesson and a quiz, then this might be a little bit too busy. You might want to look at one page instead. So for this, right now you only have English and International Spanish installed. You always have International English installed. This thing right here is kind of available because this up here is available. So at a site level, you can install language packs, and there's a few hundred of them, I think. And a student, if you allow it, can come in here and set their language of choice. I don't want to leave the page right now because I'll lose my settings, but they can set their language of choice. Here, this says, regardless of what the student picks, force this language in this course. The reason you might do that would be, for example, for a Spanish course. If you're teaching a Spanish course, you might want all of the Moodle stuff in the course to be in Spanish. That would make sense. So by doing this, regardless of what they choose up here, all of the Moodle generated content, like these words, all these headers and everything would be in Spanish. They would come from the Spanish language pack. What it doesn't do is translate your content. So if you write a quiz or load a page, build a page, this doesn't translate it. This is just the Moodle generated stuff on the page. But that would force the language unless you say do not force. This one says, if I have an announcements forum, how many posts do I want to show in the number of recent announcements? The default is 5. This one can get a little frustrating for people who don't understand it, because if you have anything but 0 here, and then you say, I don't want an announcements forum, then it's very common for Moodle to create an announcements forum so that it can show the number of recent you want. So if that keeps happening, you have to come in here and change this to 0 so that Moodle won't create one for you and display the number of recent that you're saying it should. This one just says whether you want the students to see the gradebook or not. This is their gradebook. Students can't see the grades of other students. This just means, do you want students to see their own gradebook in the course? Default is yes. And then again, with activity reports, it's yes or no. This one defaults no because activity reports can get a little confusing depending on how the things are set up. So unless there's a reason to, you generally leave activity reports set to no. Files and uploads, this just says if anything is in the course that allows somebody to upload a file, what's the maximum file size? The site limit is 2 gigabytes, and then you got all these steps in between. If you have anything like a forum or assignment activity, something where somebody can add something to it, you might want to keep this in mind based on what types of things they would upload. So if I have a course that's about filmmaking and I've got people uploading videos, I'd probably want this number to be kind of big because they might be uploading big videos. Or I might say, load it to YouTube. I don't want you loading big, huge videos in here, and I'm going to limit it to 100K, which also means you can't upload a 10 megabyte photo of your cat from your phone or something. So keep this in mind because it does kind of relate to your server capacity on Munami's servers. I don't know what that limit is, but if you set this to like 2 gigs and everybody's up there, loading videos of when they went skiing or something, it might get a little out of hand. This one right here is called completion tracking. This one is really interesting. This has to be enabled at the site level, which it is right now because we have it available here. What this allows you to do is it allows Moodle to keep track of whether or not an activity in a course has been completed by a student. If you set this to no, then you can't use completion tracking in the course. If you set it to yes, then you can enable it for any activities you want. You can also disable it activity by activity. But if you want to use this function, it has to be on in the course. So if you're in a course and you're like, I can't show completion for this, then it's not enabled at the course setting level. One thing to keep, yeah, it is good for the students to see their progress as long as you use it wisely. Something I would point out here is that completion tracking or completion of an activity is not the same as passing an activity. So you could have a quiz that, for example, you want to use completion tracking on the quiz to trigger something else. And let's say by complete, you just mean you want somebody to take it. And they took the quiz, and then based on that quiz result, you do something else, whether they passed it or not. So even though they failed the quiz, it might still show them as being complete because they got a grade. And that's all you say is required is get a grade. So just keep that in mind. That completion just means complete, yes or no. And the criteria that that the student has to meet for the thing to be considered complete changes depending on what type of activity it is. It could be just they manually mark complete, they view it, they have to make a post, they have to make 3 posts, they have to get a passing grade, they have to get 97%, they have to get it done by a certain date, things like that. So there's a lot of different ways things can be completed. Groups is a way to separate students within a course. So if you think about, let's say this is this facilitating course and one instructor teaches it to 3 groups of people, but not at the same time, then you can separate them. So you have group A, B, and C. If you have it separate, then you can have 200 students in groups of 50 over 4 groups, and they're all in the course in this group together. And as far as they're concerned, they're one of 50 students, not 200. The instructor, assuming the instructor isn't tied to one of those groups, would see everybody. If you switch it to visible, then everybody's still in the groups, but they can see each other and they see that those other groups exist. So if you want to separate by groups, you have to decide visible or separate. If you don't, then you just don't do that. Whether or not that would work for you would kind of go up to this question of how your course ID number enrollments are being used, whether you use groups to separate a group of three or three groups into one course, or whether you separate those three groups into three different courses and the instructor teaches them differently. That's just something you need to think about. I'm not saying one way is right or wrong. It's more about logistics and management. Because if you put people into the course based on a course ID number, then you need to figure out how to separate them by group once they get in. So,
Daryl, I've just started thinking about doing that, using that feature. So I might have a few more conversations with you about it separately, but I'd also have to run it by Rochelle, who's here today, and Jamie, and any of our classes that are meta-linked, because students are enrolling in separate classes, but we're using one shell to teach them. And
right.
We've been doing that for a while, and I think it's fine, but I'm not sure if some of these instructors maybe don't know that there could be a different way to do it, and maybe that way could be better. I'm not sure if it could be. That's why we have to have a conversation.
Yeah, meta courses is one way to achieve that. You can also use cohorts, which is another way to kind of achieve what you're talking about.
Yeah, and cohorts. So groups, in that sense, we don't really ever use groups because our class sizes are so small.
Right.
And we teach one instance of a course. Doug teaches psychology courses. There's a handful of students enrolled. There's not really a reason to separate out groups.
Yeah, so for example, I know the guy that is the Moodle admin for the Helena School District where I live. And a few of the high school classes do this. You might have a science class where the teacher teaches 4 periods of science throughout the day, and he doesn't want to manage 4 courses, so he'll split it in separate groups, period 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah, but it's one shell for the instructor to use.
Yes, it's one instructor course, one instructor, one course, one set of activities, all of that stuff. But depending on what he's doing, he can work inside of the course outside of that and like post things that everybody sees, or he can make forum posts specific to one group or multiple groups, so he can work outside of it or within the groups. And then as far as the students is concerned, they're the only ones in the course.
We have stacked courses in our business program that are both 200 level and 300 level, or 200 level and 400 level, and students are being meta-linked into a parent course that is just one shell for the instructor to teach, but they are enrolled in either a lower level or an upper level, and they have different assignments based on which level they're enrolled in. And right now, because they are still small class sizes, it's practically manageable, but yeah, it could be treated a lot
keep in mind, you can't separate activities by group. You can't have some activities in a course for one group and some for another.
Right. So Jamie and Rochelle and David, we can try to think about that a little bit more and see if that's something we would want to do, or that would work with some of our social sciences and some of our English classes as well. But I'm still toying with that idea. We'll have to take a look at it a little bit further, because it could be useful, might not be necessary, but it's something to think about.
Sure. Okay. So basically what that means is if you're going to use groups, you need to decide separate or visible. If you don't, then you leave it to no. Forced group mode means if an activity can be segmented by groups, like a forum post, then you want to switch this to yes, and that will make it so that you don't have to go into each groupable activity and decide separate by groups, yes or no. This just forces it on everything in the course that can be. And then you have groupings. You have groups in a course, which is inside of the user settings for a course. Groupings is just a group of other groups. So it's just another way to categorize things, group people together. There's a lot of examples of how to do that. But just keep in mind, you have groups. If you need to group multiple groups together for some reason, that's a grouping. And then you can have a default grouping for that. Down here, you have role renaming. These manager, course creator, teacher, non-edit. So these are all the default role names. So as you might be aware already in Moodle, within a course up to a site level, you have roles. So right now I'm as an administrator for the site. Well, some of you might be a teacher. Your students are going to be student, obviously. What this means is within the confines of this course, do I want to call students something else? Maybe I want to call them learner. And I want to call the teacher mentor, for example. So I don't have to go out and rename the role at the site level. I can just say in this course, I have mentors and learners, or mentors and mentees, or something like that. And then whenever something like that shows up in Moodle, it would just replace this word with that word. That's all that means. And then tags are just like keywords. So it's kind of like just keywords for a course. You might have, the course name and such, but maybe you got kind of 10 little snippets of a subject or tags or something that kind of describes what goes into this course. This is a searchable field. So if somebody goes and does a course search, they can find this. So if you do a keyword math, you might not have math in the course name. It might be called Geometry 101, but you might add a tag called math or Euclidean or something. So that's all the settings page. This is what you'll go through every time you create a course. And if you inherit a course and you want to go through and kind of, redesign it or restructure it, then you might go through this. So I'm going to save and return. Now I'm going to come over here and refresh this page.
Okay.
What's that? Sorry?
Just checking in that everyone knows how to get to edit settings of the course.
Yeah, so in the version you're looking at right now, you won't see this. You'll see a section in administration. I've got site admin. You're going to see one called course administration. And inside of that, you'll see an item called turn editing on. Course administration and the Boost campus theme has been moved up here.
And this is good, Daryl, because this is what we're moving to. So
yeah, so if you're in this new site, you're going to go into a course. And like I said, assuming you have the proper role in the course as like teacher, for example, then you look for this little gear up here, and then you go into edit settings, and that'll get you to the page we were just looking at. And so now you see the result of some of the changes we made. We made the short name FLSE, so that's what's showing up in the breadcrumbs. We changed the description to a video, so now I have a video here in the description. Now if I come up and say turn editing on, then you'll see I get a bunch of new tools and links and things that I can use. So now I've got all these little edit links here. I've got these things in the blocks, these little crosshairs and the gears. I got these little pencils. I've got these little draggers. So I'm going to go over these, kind of how you work when you're managing a course. The first thing I'll show you is the blocks. So over here in this right-hand column, I've got latest news, upcoming events, recent activity, assignments, and so on. So some of these might not be relevant. If I don't want to show latest news, I click on the gear and I say delete. It'll say, are you sure? You say yes, and it's gone. So then I say, well, I want upcoming events, but I want activities above it. So I'm going to take this and just drag it up there. So activities at the top, events is down there. I don't want recent activity because I don't want to show all the stuff that I'm doing in the course, so I'll delete that. I'm going to come into forums, and I want a forum search, but I want to configure it a little bit. So I'll come into here and say, I want this to show up in a certain place, or do I want it visible? Maybe I want to see it, but I don't want the students to see it. So I'm going to change it to no, and I'm going to change its weight to 10. This scale here basically allows you to organize the blocks top to bottom without manually dragging them around. You kind of give them priority. So in this case, I'm going to give this -10, which is first, and I'm going to say visible no. So I'll click save. So anyway, that's the idea. With these tools up here, you can move the blocks around, change their settings, things like that. If you want to add a new one, you click down there and build it up. So I'm going to click course and site summary, which is what I wanted to show you. So the thing that I put in the description, that's what shows up in the course summary. So this could be the little head and shoulders introductory video from the instructor, right? And so maybe I want to put this right here. So everybody comes into the course and it's just saying, configure that. I thought I could name it. No. So somebody can come in here and click play. Another one that's really useful is called the HTML block. So similar to the code view I was showing you before, with the HTML view, you can put in almost anything, really. So I come into the HTML block and I'll configure it. And you can see I can give it a title. I can do that same video thing down in here, and I'll click Save. And so maybe I want the video, but I don't want it to be in the course description. I want it to be just on this block. You can see I made a mistake there because I pasted the code in, but I wasn't in code view. So I'm going to take that, expand it, switch it over to code view, paste it back in, turn code view back off, save. And now I've got the video in the course summary, but I've also got it in this little HTML block down here, and it's just not loading at the moment because of what I'm doing. So that's the idea of managing your blocks over on the right. That's just a way to kind of expand on the course, add other functions. You also have your sections. So you can see here in the middle, I've got this overview section, which is kind of like the home space for the course. Then I've got unit 1. This is section 1, but it's been named unit 1, blah, 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 week 1. If I click on the little pencil, you can see I can rename it whatever I want. If I delete it, then it'll go to, I thought it would go to its default. But anyway, this is the section title. This thing here is a label. So this is just a picture. And then these are things down below. You can tell by the icons when you get used to what these are. This is a page. This is a URL hyperlink. These are forums. This is an assignment. So like a little hand there means they're turning it in. Somewhere down here I thought I had a quiz. This is a wiki. So it's kind of like a Wikipedia logo. There's a PDF. There's a folder of files. So you can kind of tell what the thing is based on its little icon. As you add and remove things, it's really easy to move things around. So I've got unit 2 down here. This one's called unit 1. If I want to, I can just take unit 2, use the little cross target there and move it up. If I want the unit, this thing here to be at the top, I can just do that. So it's really easy to rearrange the content the way you want it. Clicking on any of these pencils, you can rename the thing. And then if you want to edit itself, then you got the edit link over here next to this. Any questions about all of that? That's just kind of your overall layout of the course and how to get around in edit mode. And again, to do that, you come up here, click on the gear and say turn editing on or off. So now what I'm going to do is show you where these things come from. So this course is already built out, but let's say I want to go down and add another section. So I've got unit 5. I'm going to come down here and click this little link at the bottom, and I'm going to add one new section. It's called topic 7. I'll take it and I'll move it up here. I'll rename it and call it unit 7. So there's my thing. So now I've got unit 7 and I want to add something to it. So I've got this add an activity or a resource link. And you'll see you've got them in each of the sections, right? So at the bottom of each section, you've got a link. Using this will allow you to add an activity or resource to that section. So I'll click on this and you'll see the list. This is definitely going to look different than what you see in 2.8. What I really like here is that they're grouped. So activities are things that students interact with. They participate with this thing somehow at some level. Resources are things that are just outgoing. It's a one-way. So you're giving them a file, you're giving them a link, you're showing them a page, showing them, a label. So I'm going to briefly go through these just so you have kind of an awareness of what they are, but we're not going to really get in depth on any of them. Most of these will have a pretty good description here anyway, so I don't want to read the screen to you. But as you go through and get more familiar with these, you can just click on add an activity or a resource selected over here, and you'll get a description of what goes into it. So basically, assignment is turning things in. The key thing you got to remember here is that Moodle can't grade an assignment automatically. It can grade a quiz because it can look and see, yeah, what's the right answer. But with an assignment, it could be a file, it could be an essay, it could be a handwritten thing, it could be a photograph, who knows? Moodle has no way of looking at a thing. So with an assignment, you typically have a grading method called a rubric that the instructional designer or the course builder puts together that says, how do I grade this assignment? If it's a photography assignment, then we're looking for things like framing and lighting and exposure and color and subject matter, things like that. And so what you do is you go through the rubric and you say what the gradable points are, or the gradable areas of the thing are, and how many points those different things are worth. And then the person that's grading it follows the rubric and it gives them guidance on how to grade that assignment. It could be, if it's an essay, is the structure good? Is grammar good? How many spelling, take off 1 point for every spelling error, things like that. So as you decide to use an assignment, think about how it's going to be graded and how you provide the information to the grader on how to do that. And you do that through a rubric. And once you do that in the assignment, you can have a rubric mapped out offline, but then you would rebuild it in here, and it gives the grader like a little grid thing where they can go through and fill in numbers and such for each of the gradable points. So attendance is just that, attendance. So if somebody comes in, you take attendance, are they online at a certain time? Auto attendance is the same thing, but it just happens automatically. If class is from 2 to 3 on Tuesday, then auto attendance goes through and sees, is the student active and attending the course when they're supposed to be, based on that. BigBlueButton is a lecture tool, if you've ever heard of it. It's a open source program that you can host yourself, or you can work with like a BBB partner. But basically, it's for doing lectures, which might be an advantage to you guys if you have remote learners and disconnected campuses and extensions and things like that, because you can take BigBlueButton, the instructor comes on, broadcasts a lecture, and then you can take BigBlueButton as an activity in your course and connect it to the lecture. So the instructor, even though he's not in class, they can go out and do that lecture, broadcast it online through the BigBlueButton activity. Chat is like the Wild West of online talking. There's no control, there's no moderation, there's no topics. It's just everybody in a chat room typing. So it's a good way to promote interaction. People can just type up and say, hey, how's it going today? What's going on? Welcome everybody. That kind of thing. It's just an ongoing rolling chat activity.
Hi, I use chat every week, and I'm still not really clear what the difference is between the types of chats that I can select. I mean, once I click check off chat and then they add, it's going to give me a choice of different types of chat, and I'm still not really clear on what the differences are and why I should use one versus the other.
Yeah, so you can see you can have kind of an ongoing chat. You can see in the description here it can be a one-time thing, or it might be repeated. You can schedule it. All the things are recorded. You can have a Q&A. There's not really a right or a wrong way to use it. If you're thinking of it from an instructional design perspective, you just have to go through all the different ways it can be used and decide if it's a good fit for what it is you're trying to do. So the same as any of these, I can't say that there's a right or a wrong way to use any of them. I know that's a vague answer, but it's hard for me to say because it just kind of depends on what it is you're trying to achieve. What I'd recommend, though, is add a chat of a certain type and then just see how it behaves and try to use it and see if it tries to fit what it is you're trying to do.
We can do some test courses, and I haven't played around with chat too much either. I've used it only in one way. So with the other options, we can make like a test class and add all the different kinds of options and play around with it, add some test students and see what kind of fits for what you want to do.
Yeah, in my opinion, that's the best way to learn stuff, is just get in here and add stuff and see how it's used. I think the trap a lot of people fall into is they learn one or two tools and then that's all they use. And there's all these other things that you can do and get creative with to create a real, immersive, interactive course. But you fall into this trap of pages, quiz, a page, quiz, page, quiz, with an occasional thing mixed in, and you kind of create a boring course. So I don't really want to lead you down a, here's the best tool to use kind of thing. because it really just depends on what you're trying to do. Okay, so a checklist is just that. You can see it allows a teacher to create a checklist that the students can go and mark off and get things done. This is similar to a progress bar, but where a checklist, you can go through and manually create a progress bar, matches items in the course that have been marked as completable through that completion tracking thing. And so you can go through and say, here's all the stuff in the course that Moodle can see as complete. And then you check boxes for which ones you want to keep track of. And then a progress bar will go across and show as they complete those. It looks similar to a checklist, but it behaves differently. So here you have a choice. This is similar to a poll or a feedback, but it's more about getting a group of people's thoughts on a certain thing, and it allows it so that they can't be swayed. So if you're trying to decide, something, will the effect of this decision, have a large impact on the student body? Yes or no? So you put that out there. It's kind of like having a vote. Students come through and they answer it, but they can't see the results until everybody's answered or at a certain time, whatever. You kind of set the parameters. So it's just a way to kind of get a quick poll on something. It could be something very important and formal and structured, or it could be, hey, I'm bringing snacks into class. Does everybody like chips or popcorn? Whatever. Database is kind of interesting. It allows you to, Moodle itself runs on a database. All the course content, everything's in a big database, but you can create a database inside of a course that allows students to create one or more entries in the database. So depending on what you're trying to do, it could be for a way for them to collect information. Say you have a course that's about biology or something, and they're supposed to collect information about some, plant or something like that. And there's 5 pieces of data they're supposed to collect for 5 different types of plants. So you can create a database activity that has an entry for plant name, 5 parameters that they're supposed to collect, and they're supposed to go in and make 5 entries. They go and do that, and then you can run single and database wide reports showing all the information that everybody collected. So it's a way to, like I said, it's kind of an assignment type thing, but it allows people to create this database entry in a structured manner where you're telling them what it is you want them to collect. External tool is if you were, say, partnering with another school that was on Blackboard or Moodle or something that supported this function called LTI, Learning Tools Interoperability. What that means is that an LTI publisher could take a piece of content, a course or a lesson or something, and publish it, and they gave you the credentials for that, and you could plug it into your course, and it'll bring that stuff from their system and embed it into your course.
That works with Blackboard?
If the person on it doesn't really matter. It's more if the system, it doesn't even need to be an an LMS. It's whatever the platform, if they can publish as an LTI publisher, if they can take content and share it through LTI, then Moodle as a consumer can drop that content into the course. A good example might be Pearson. Maybe there's a math lesson that Pearson publishes out. You get a license to it. They give you the LTI credentials. You go into external tool, add it in to pop the credentials in, and then Pearson feeds that into your Moodle without actually sending you any files.
Yeah, I think I've done that before, but with a SCORM package. I thought I used SCORM package.
SCORM, very similar to SCORM.
Okay.
Yeah, but SCORM has to reside on the server where the content's being served up. So if I gave you a SCORM package, I would have to send you the file and you would put it into your course. The exception to that is using an LTI if you want to do it that way, or you can use what's called SCORM Cloud, SCORM.com, and I could take my SCORM file, put it up into SCORM Cloud, and send you what's called a manifest that sets it up so that your LMS can pull the SCORM file from my SCORM Cloud repository and embed it into your course. Face-to-face is just an activity type where we're all going to meet wherever every Tuesday at 2 o'clock. We're going to meet in person. and this is a face-to-face activity that we're going to do. So feedback is similar to this one down here called survey. So you can see in feedback, it allows the teacher to create a custom survey for anything they want, right? A survey itself is a predefined list of questions and assessments, right? So it's a verified survey instrument. The thing you have to remember there is if you pick survey, you say what type of survey you want. I think there's 3 or 4. If you pick feedback, you can type whatever you want. You can make it 100 questions or 2. The risk of a feedback, though, is that if you're not versed or you don't know what you're doing, you can almost subconsciously write feedback to achieve the feedback that you want. So just keep that in mind when you're writing this, that the results of the feedback are going to be directly related to the quality of the questions in it.
Yeah.
So, or lack of quality in the questions in it. You have a flashcard set, which is just that, it's flashcards. So you can come up and put text or pictures or whatever. It's a simple flashcard activity. Good for things like, definitions, math, identification of stuff, things like that.
Terminology.
Yeah, terminology. I saw one where it was Greek letters. So they had a whole flashcard set of all the Greek letters and you had to say what they were. Forum is just that. You can have discussion forums, news forums, standard Q&A, all these different types of forums. Depending on what it is you're trying to do. People can subscribe to forums. You can force subscription. You can make subscription optional. You can disallow it. Forum posts can be shown as whether they've been read by the student or not, so the student can look at the forum and see if they've read a thing. This is probably the main interaction point between teachers and students with each other in a distance learning course. That's where all the discussion happens. You can take it to whatever level you want, where it's just a casual forum where everybody just talks. You can have forums that are graded and people have to make a post and they have to respond to somebody else's post for the thing to be marked complete. Instructors can grade forum posts. You can have one forum for the whole course. You can have one for each section. You can have forums based on the subject matter, all different ways you can use it. These ones I won't go through individually, but they're just games. You see, you got a little board here. So you have books with questions, crossword, hangman, millionaire, Sudoku, things like that. So good way to kind of bring a little bit of informality to a course.
Yeah, Rob uses a really cool crossword in his course. Rob stepped out of the room, but I can show the group an example after. And he doesn't use it with one of these plugins, which I'm excited to try, but he does, I don't know if it's a separate plugin or something that he linked, but after each week or each topic, he does a vocabulary check by having the students submit a crossword. So sure. I'm excited to have plugins which are now a little bit more streamlined into our activity module. Yeah,
and then you're not bringing stuff in from somewhere else.
Yeah,
Glossary
is a cool way to see it in person. It works.
Yeah. So glossary on its face is just that. A glossary is a term and definition set, but you can get really creative with it. If you want to use glossary for terminology, that's fine. But you could have a glossary that is the profile for each student or the campus directory of all the instructors. And each glossary entry is an instructor, their picture, their name, their history. It could be, all of the county seats across the state or the, animals or who knows what. There's all different kinds of ways that you can use glossary to convey information. So don't think of it as just term and definition. There's a lot of creative ways you can use it. And again, in the glossary entry itself, you're going to have that same content editing tool that we showed. So you can embed pictures, embed video, other content, things like that. So there's a lot of stuff you can put into glossaries. Glossary of, I don't know how to pronounce that, values. Yeah, that's a good idea.
I just add values.
Yeah, so that could get into, cultural stuff or, tribal things, all kinds of stuff. H5P is probably one of the coolest things. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this or not, but if you go to h5p.org, this is an open environment. It's currently free. I don't know if it will stay free forever, but it's a really cool way to bring really rich content into a learning environment. So you can see you have all these different kind of things that you can bring in, recorders, charts, essays, all kinds of these activities that you can create inside of H5P. Image hotspots is a cool one, multiples. One of the most popular is interactive video, where you can take a YouTube video, for example, and put in pops-ups and questions and stuff along the timeline. Even though the video is hosted on YouTube, H5P can lay over the top of it. Once you have that, I'm not sure if I've got to log in here still. Yeah, so let me log into here, see if I have any assets.
Everyone's been geeking out over this plugin, this feature for the last 2 years.
Yeah, so here I just got like a simple, I've got a simple
Sure.
question check. So I'm going to come into here. And I'm going to come back to that, but just keep in mind that if you have H5P content, it gives you some really creative tools that go way beyond what Moodle can do, and then you can bring it into H5 or into Moodle as an H5P activity.
Yeah, we requested that plugin so that we could play around with it too, because it's just like the buzz thing right now.
Yeah. So journal is a way just for teachers to obtain student feedback about a topic. So it's just a journal. Instructor adds it, says, give me your thoughts on whatever, and the student can type right in online and answer it that way. So similar to an assignment, but they're typing in directly instead of submitting a file. Lesson, as you can see by the icon here, is a way to do kind of a branching scenario-based thing. It can be linear, where you just have page with a button to a question to a page and so on. But you can get really intricate branching with this to where, let's say you ask, present some information on a slide, and then you go to the next slide and you ask a question, and then based on whether it's right or wrong, you can send them over here on a branch for some remedial learning, and then send them back here, and they keep doing that until they answer the question correctly. I've done one, for example, on geometry, where it talks about geometry, and then it comes in and they have 4 buttons: circle, square, triangular, or trapezoids. And so they can come in and select a button and go down the circle path and learn about circles and spheres and so on. And so lessons can get really complicated. It takes some time to learn how to use them, but they're a really good way to kind of create a really intricate lesson for a student to go through something that might be fairly complicated in its content without resorting to something like a slideshow. So questionnaire is similar to survey, but you can use a variety of question types for the purpose of gathering data. So it's kind of a split between feedback and survey, where survey is affixed to all the questions. Feedback is free for all, do whatever you want. Questionnaire is kind of in the middle. So you have, I can create the question types and add those in. So it's kind of a halfway between feedback and survey. Quiz is fairly obvious. Questions, answers. You have different types of questions you can use, from multiple choice, drag and drop, matching, true, false, all that sort of thing. Re-engagement is fairly new. In fact, I don't think, it doesn't even have help. I haven't used re-engagement yet, and I don't really understand it. So I would encourage you, if you want to check it out, go ahead and add it and see what it does. I haven't had the time to really try it yet.
Is it just a part of Moodle 3.4?
Yeah, it's just one of the default activities, re-engagement. Yeah.
Okay, I'll check it out.
I'm assuming it's for re-engaging students that aren't engaged. SCORM package, as we talked about a little bit before, this is just a way if somebody developed content somewhere else and you want to bring it into your site. If the platform that they're using can publish to a SCORM file, something like Articulate, Storyline, or Adobe Captivate is what I use quite a bit. You can publish to a SCORM package. The SCORM designer can put what goes into the content, assessments, grading, pass, fail, complete, incomplete, things like that. Package it all up, give you the file either through the original file or from manifest from SCORM Cloud. You plug it in, and then Moodle can communicate with the SCORM package through that standard. It's called a model, actually. SCORM stands for Shareable Content Object Repository Model. And so if the SCORM package follows the model and the LMS Moodle, which also follows that same model, then the external SCORM package can convey and transport data back and forth to Moodle, like completion, pass, fail, responses to questions, time spent, what slide they looked at, things like that.
I set up one of our instructors with a Cengage learning package, SCORM package last semester, and it worked really well.
Yeah, I like it.
With module tests.
Yeah, I've been using SCORM for probably the last, I don't know, 6-7 years or something. It's pretty handy, especially when we bring SCORM Cloud into the mix. Simple certificate is just that. You have a certificate. There's not a lot of design to it. There used to be a certificate module that was really kind of complicated. You had to get in and program an XML file to configure it. The advantage was you can make it look like whatever you want, but the disadvantage was hardly anybody did it because it was a big pain in the butt. So now you have simple certificate, which means you go and find a certificate image. So if you went down to the Office store and bought the gold leaf certificate with the border and the fleur-de-lis and all that, you find an image, you load that up to the simple certificate, you configure it with what information you want to go on, course name, date, grade, student name, instructor name, stuff like that. And then if somebody clicks on it, then they get the certificate and it populates all the fields based on what you say goes on it. One thing you have to keep in mind is if the certificate is available, then a student can click on it, whether or not they completed what you consider to be the requirement or not. So if you're going to use something like a certificate, you generally want that hidden until they complete the appropriate requirements to get it, whether that's passing a quiz or an exam or completing all the activities or whatever. So just keep that in mind. If you throw a certificate.
Yeah, that would go really well with some activity completion.
Definitely.
Completion track, activity completion, and then restrict access.
Right. So you have a simple certificate on there and you're restricting access until they receive a course grade of 70%. If you don't do something like that and the certificate's just down there, anybody can click on it because they can see it and Moodle doesn't care. So you got Wiki, similar to Wikipedia. It's a collaboration tool. This is the common one that's used in a social format course because anybody can participate and write and update content, things like that. It's similar to Wikipedia. Workshop is another social kind of one. This one is really interesting if it's done right because you can allow peer assessment. So rather than the instructor grading everything, the students can review each other's work. So they're submitting digital files. You can see here they're assessed on various things that the teacher puts together, and then the students can grade each other. So it's kind of a peer review idea. And there's a lot of things you can do with that. So Zoom, we're on GoToMeeting. Zoom is similar to GoToMeeting or Google Hangouts. So again, for remote learning type environments, if you guys implement Zoom, you can create a Zoom meeting, plug it into the course, and everybody can jump into the course and get on Zoom at the same time. So that was all the activities. Now I'm just going to go down to, this kind of scrolls weird sometimes because it's a modal inside of another window. So I've got to scroll this middle part, but also the course itself. So down here you have resources. So that was all the activities. You have a smaller set of resources. I like to group these together. You have file and folder. So file and folder are things that people can download. So if you do file, that's a PDF, a Word file, things like that. A folder is a way to collect files together so somebody can access all the files in one place. Page and book are related, but for those, the content is on the course. You don't download it. So if you create a page, then that's just typing stuff up. You have the same content idea. There's a link, somebody clicks on it, it goes to another page in Moodle, and it shows all the page content that you create. If that's really long or you need to group it somehow or segment it somehow, then you can choose to use a book. So with that, you create a book. A book has chapters. Each chapter is similar to a page. It has a TOC for each of the chapters, or a TOC that directs to each one of the chapters. And then there's navigation where somebody can page through the book. So if you've got online content that they're needing to read, you might provide it as a Word file. You might present it as a Word file and a PDF and something else. You might decide to put it on a page, or it's 20 pages long and you decide to put it in a book. So depending on what it is you're trying to show, then you can decide which of those four you might want to use to present it. IMS content package is similar to the external tool or SCORM, but rather like a Moodle course, for example, can be backed up into an IMS content package. So if somebody else has an old course that was coming from, Angel or something like that, and they can send it to an IMS package, then you can bring it in that way. I'll skip the label, go down to URL. It's just that, it's a hyperlink. Something to keep in mind, I see this quite a bit, and so please remember this point. It is possible to create a hyperlink in a course to another activity in Moodle. So let's say, for example, I just ran into one with somebody today that thought they broke something. Let's say you go into your course, you have a quiz. You right-click on the quiz or open it up and you get the URL for that quiz. You then copy it, then you go into a page, you have all of your stuff, and at the end of it, you say, okay, when you're done, click here to jump to the quiz. You add a hyperlink to the quiz. That works if they remain in that course. If you take the course and you back it up and restore it, Moodle will take the instance of the quiz, duplicate it into the new course because it restores it as a new version of everything. So the quiz itself will get a new ID number and a new URL, but Moodle will not understand that your page had a hard-coded hyperlink to that old URL. And so somebody goes into the page, they click on what they think is the quiz for the course, and it sends them over to the other one that they're not enrolled in or doesn't even exist anymore. So keep in mind when you're adding URLs that it's a hard-coded URL and Moodle will not change it. So if it goes to an external site that you can't control, or if it's something internal that might change, it's a thing you have to maintain. So keep that in mind if you decide to use the URL resource type. And the last one I'll show you here is a label. We're going to use this one first. So it's similar to page, but the content that you drop into a label is right on the page of the course itself. So I'm going to use the same video that I used before. So I'm going to come in here into the same familiar tool. I'm going to expand it, click on the code view, drop that. I'm going to go before it and say, here's how to build a pool. Okay, so there's all my content. I can put whatever I want in there. And now I'm going to go down here. These things down below, you'll see a lot of this on any other of the activities that you add. We'll add another one here in a minute. But you have common module settings. Do I show it on a course page? Do I hide it? Or do I make it available but not shown on the course page? This is relatively new. If you read this, it's a way of hiding things until you want them to show up in the same time or at a certain time. So either it's on the page and it's visible, and that's fine. From the Moodle 3.3 or so earlier, in going back and especially in the 2-point versions, one of the things we did was orphan something, right? So it was something people did on accident where, or it was kind of a workaround. You wanted something in the course, but you didn't want it to be visible all the time, but you wanted it to be shown, right? It had to be available. And so what you would do is take this activity or whatever, put it down in topic 12, but the course would only be 10 topics long. And so you got this activity that's kind of buried down here in a topic that's not seen. At some point, they went from allowing you to do that to actually calling it orphaned. So if you went into a course, made it 12 topics long, stuck something down in 12, and then deleted the topic, instead of the topic going away, it would say orphaned activities, and everything would be down there. The problem was it's orphaned, yes, and it's doing what you need it to do. It's just not where you need it to be. It's down there or somewhere else. And so people were trying to group them together and using labels to, group them and such. So now what you can do is say, show it, make it hidden, or make it available, but don't show it on the page. So it's available to use, and it's in the right place. You just don't see it on the course page. So it's similar to orphaning. Does that make sense? It's kind of confusing until you try to use it.
Where do you see it, and how do students access it?
Well, you can see it as an instructor. I'll go ahead and do it with this. But students access it by, maybe you link it from somewhere else, or there's some other way of getting into it other than it's just right there on the page.
So I've seen an instructor do this, or I thought, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have an instructor that if you make an activity in a class, let's say it's a quiz or a resource or something, and it's called something specific, and then when you go into a different activity or in the settings or in a label, you can type out the same name of that, and it'll just automatically hyperlink it. It'll recognize.
Yeah, that's called auto linking.
Yeah, auto linking. It'll auto link it, and then you can have that same activity available lower as well, or you can turn that off, but it'll still be auto linked to it.
Yeah, you can do that, but you have to be very careful because in your naming, because you could be just typing a word, but you inadvertently link to something because it was named that way.
Yeah, like syllabus.
Right.
Quiz. Yeah, and I've seen people say, okay, so take the quiz. They're meaning the new quiz and down the midterm or something, but it's linking to the quiz from week 1.
Exactly.
So you do have specific, but it's achieving the same kind of thing though if you're doing it right, right?
I think so. Yeah. So the thing I was telling you about where, open up the quiz, that could be going to a quiz that is available but not shown on the course page, and you link to it somehow. So depending on how you get there, it goes back to my idea of using a hyperlink to a fixed asset. Mm-hmm. You have to make sure that link is valid later. So again, that's something I would mess around with. It's not a common thing. It's kind of a course design tool. If there's some reason you want activities or resources to be available but not seen all the time, then it says a link to the activity or resource must be provided from elsewhere, such as a page resource. It'd still be listed in the gradebook and other reports. So it's a way of, it's very similar to orphaning. It's just that it puts it in the right spot instead of buried down below. But I'll leave it like this so we can see the effect of the label on the course page when we go. So you have these two sets down here, restrict access and activity completion. Because this is a label, the only thing I can do is either not track completion or the students can manually mark it. If I do this, then there's, on the course page you saw there was little check boxes. And so the student would be able to come over here and check a box next to the label to mark completion. That's what manually mark complete. And then you can say also expect them. I expect them to check this box off by tomorrow or something. You can also do restrict access. So let's say I'm going to restrict access to this label until somebody completes an activity, and that's going to be the Unit 2 introduction must be marked complete. And so maybe this label is the Unit 3 introduction, and somebody has to mark Unit 2 introduction off manually, and when they do that, then this one would show up. So that's the idea of how restricting access works. This can get really complex also, or you can have must and must nots and must be marked complete or not be marked, or complete with a fail grade or complete with a pass grade. You can have restriction sets that can be multiples nested together. So it can be really, really complex here. The advantage though is you can create a very dynamic course. I actually did one at the Mountain Moot on this subject where you can go through and create content that shows and hides itself based on what the student is doing or their progress in the course. I'll show you a quick example of it here on another site. But outside of
the individualized.
Right, yeah, a way to individualize the course. The thing you do here is you set the restrictions set, and then there's this little eyeball here that says, until this criteria is met, do you see the activity but it's grayed out and they can't interact with it and it tells them what they need to do, or do you hide it completely? That's what that little eyeball means there. So I'm going to get rid of this because I don't want to track it. And you got tags similar to course. You can add tags to things. And then if you're going to use competencies, then you can add this activity to the competency set and such. So I'm going to save this label and return to the course, and you'll see the video on the course page. And you can see available but not shown on the course page. So I can see it because I'm an administrator. But if I come up here, I think this is where it is. No. I don't know where this is anymore. There used to be a thing called switch role to student, so I could view the course as a student. I'm not sure where it is in this.
Where is it in this one? Dashboard? No.
Yeah, it moved in the theme. I can't remember where the...
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Switch role to student so you can see students.
Right. Yeah, I just don't know. I've never been able to find it in this boost theme. So anyway, my point is, though, that by creating a label, you can see I don't click on anything. The content is just there. It's right on the page. So that's how this image is done. That's how this picture is done. These are all labels, right?
Yep. Labels are super versatile. I use them for everything. They're like a text box or a HTML box or just a catch-all.
All kinds of stuff you can put in there. So the one I was going to show you here is it's another company I do work for. I'm just going to show you a brief example of activity completion and access restrictions.
Okay.
And kind of what it does to a course, or how you can use it in a course. Yeah, I don't think I have a student account here. Oops, too fast.
You're a robot.
Yeah, I get ahead of that captcha a little too much. So here I'm actually coming in through a WordPress site. I'm going to go to my courses, which sends me over to Moodle. And I'm going to go to this course. All right, so in this course, you can see this label is hidden, not available unless the pretest is incomplete, otherwise hidden. So what this means is, like I'm saying, here's how to get started in the course. Once you get started in the course, I don't want to say that anymore, right? So if somebody comes through here and they take the pretest, which is the first thing they wanted them to do, then once the pretest is complete, then the label goes away. I'm not showing it to them anymore. And then the lessons, you can see these are SCORM packages. So these lessons down here are not available until the pretest is complete. So by completing the pretest, the actions that happen is this label goes away, these lessons show up, and that's what I'm looking at. So then I go and complete the lessons at whatever the requirement is for those, and then the topic quiz shows up once those 4 activities are done. Once the quiz is done, then the section below shows up and pretest 2 is taken. Pretest 2 triggers the lessons. Those lessons trigger the quiz. That quiz triggers the next lesson, and so on, right? So when a student comes in here fresh, actually in this one I can do it because I know where it is. I thought I knew where it was. Where is it? I don't know where switch role is. Anyway, if I was in here as a student, at the beginning, I would see a label telling me what to do, go take the pretest, and the content will show up. I have the homeroom stuff here. I do the pretest, and the course just kind of builds up as I go through it. One thing I might do beyond this is take everything and flip it so that the new stuff is at the top. So I might build it so pretest is down here. The pretest triggers the lessons as they go up, and then the quiz shows up, and then the next topic is up here. And that way, as I complete things, the new stuff shows up at the top instead of going down to the bottom. In this case, I'm not too worried about it because I'm using this layout called collapsible topics. So I can go through and look at it this way, and I don't have to worry about showing too much stuff. So that's an example of activity completion and access restriction on things.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that too, so that we don't get the scroll of death. To every time instead of going through week 1 and then week 2 opens below it and week 3, I was thinking about week 1 and then week 2 opens above it and then week 3, so that the older stuff's down at the bottom as you go along.
Yeah,
So
you might want to look at the grid format. I'm going to switch that. I like to show that when the question comes up.
Yeah, and that's new. So we're not familiar with the grid format yet, but that's going to be in this new site for us, isn't it?
Yeah, it's available.
3-4.
So it takes a little bit of design, but this is the grid. So you can see I've got the overview section up here, which doesn't go into a grid, but then I've got all of these.
Like block 0.
What's that?
Like the block 0 section?
Yeah, it's kind of like the
overview
0
is?
block. Yeah, the topic section.
Okay.
But now each of the sections down below go into these. I can see this stuff because I have editing turned on. So you can see if I take Unit 1 and put it back up here. Now if I turn editing off, then what the students see are this. They don't see all the stuff down below.
Oh, cool.
So then they click on this. So they click on that grid. They go, oh yeah, I want this unit here. So they click on that. They go to this link to open up this resource, which I don't have access to. Again, see that's an example. That's a hard-coded link to a course that I don't have access to right now. And so then when I'm done, I come back up here and go to the course page, and there we go. And you can also restrict access to 2 sections based on some other criteria. So maybe Unit 2 isn't available until I complete the final quiz in Unit 1. And so if I build that chain of events that way, I could sit here looking at Unit 1 until I complete the quiz, and then Unit 2 shows up and so on.
Okay.
There's also a layout that kind of does the effect of the reverse thing. It's called a reverse topics format, where you set up topic 1, but everything's flipped on its head. But you can do the same thing by manual, just building it backwards. Same effect.
So collapsed topics, is that a plugin or is that default in 3.4?
That's a course layout that you'd have to ask to be added. I put in a ticket to support and ask if you can have the reverse topics layout, or sorry, the collapsed topics layout, but that's what that does. So you can open and collapse a single topic. You can do it this way. It's just a real easy way to do everything. In this case, I had it to where this is the description of the topic rather than a label. But if I wanted to, I could have put this stuff in a label and then it would just look like this, because this stuff wouldn't be the topic description. It would just be a label within the topic.
And this is all manipulated by the student. You don't have to set it as the teacher, like which ones are collapsed this week or whatever, but the student can go in there.
Correct. Yeah, the student can come in and go, I'm focused on topic 4 right now, so that's all I'm going to look at.
Yeah.
But if you went to the grid format, then they can go, I'm looking at Unit 4 and do it this way. Same idea.
Yeah. We need both of those just because that scroll of death as it gets towards the end of the semester is too much for some of our
Well, you wouldn't use both. You can use grid or collapsing topics. So if you had collapsing topics added, then you would get it, once it's added to the site, then you can go into course settings and it would be down in here under course format.
Okay.
So you can do
But
grid
some instructors, if they wanted, could do grid format or they could do collapsed topics format.
Yes, but not both.
That could be instructor,
right?
Right.
Yeah, it just depends on what it is they're trying to do.
Okay.
You know, another way you can do it is, let's say I go to topics format and I'm going to show one section per page, and I will just hidden second, I don't have anything hidden, so let me do this. So I change it back to topics, one section per page. I'll turn editing back off again. And now I come in and now I can click on that. Why am I not seeing this? Oh, this behaves differently in Boost apparently. What I should be able to do is click on this and get links down here left or right to move forward and backwards.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, that might not work in Boost. I think I want to make a note of that. That's interesting. So one topic per page Boost. One thing I'm going to do here really quick, we're kind of wrapping up our time. We started a little bit late, but we're at about an hour and a half, so I'm kind of playing right now. Does anybody have any questions before I just want to switch and try something with the appearance real quick?
You guys have questions in this room?
I can't wait to play around with it on there.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, Daryl, what we're doing right now is going to do the Great Migration over the weekend. The courses are available for all instructors, faculty, and adjuncts right now in our current site, which is on version 2.8. So you can go in, you can play around, you can make all the changes you want until Friday at 6 p.m. And then we're going to basically take a snapshot of everything that looks like and start copying it over to this new server that's going to also be upgraded to 3.4. So you'll still be able to go into there on the weekend, but anything you do won't have hit that 6 p.m. snapshot or whatever. So it's going to be migrating over. And then we were told it should take about 3 days. It's like 90 gigs, so it's going to be a big conversion over there. And then as soon as it's done, I'll send out an email with this new link, which it's not. It might temporarily be this Munami link. I'm not totally sure what it's actually going to be yet.
Right. Okay.
But it's only going to be temporary. It's only going to be temporary because it's going to be mycampus.iḷisaġvik.edu. But it's a long story. We can't. It's not a long story. We just can't turn it into that right away because there's still summer classes happening.
Sure.
So I don't want to do summer classes. So for our instructors, we're going to have to live on a temporary URL for a week, and then the start of classes, the new site will become mycampus.iḻisaġvik.edu again. Are there any good resources online, Daryl, besides Moodle Docs? Like the user guide?
Moodle.org is the other one. So Moodle Docs is the user manual. Moodle.org is the community. So if you come into Moodle.org and go community forums, anybody on Moodle should have an account here. So this is actually running Moodle. So you can see these are all Moodle courses and things. So if I go into Moodle in English, then I come in, this is a Moodle course, and basically it's all forums. So if I'm real curious about, badges, then you can see all these discussions that people have about badges. Some are dead conversations, others go on and on and on and on. Really helpful community though, all over the world. So between the Moodle Docs and Moodle.org, I'd say those are the two big ones.
Yeah, Moodle Docs, and that's where the manual is. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, docs, docs.moodle.org. So this one is just like all the help files. Every thing in the course has a Moodle doc. Let me do something here real quick. Course format. Oh, I didn't get to show one section per page. That's why I wasn't getting anything.
I was thinking it might just be that, honestly.
I must have scrolled my
I didn't
mouse
see it
on
when you were
accident
setting it
or
up.
something. There we go. So now I click on a topic and that's what I see. So now I can jump to another one, or I can do here to go to unit 2. So now let me switch back to the Boost theme and see if that still works. So appearance.
There it is with the arrows.
Theme. Yeah, see, so now I'm in unit 2, so I can go back to unit 1 or forward to unit 3, or I can jump, assuming those topics are visible. They could be hidden because I haven't completed something.
Yeah, that's helpful so that we don't have to have our students scroll.
Switch to this, go back to Boost Campus, right? You run.
Yep.
Oops. Continue. Home. Course. Yeah, I just must have scrolled that menu item with my mouse on accident. So now you got unit 1 and 2 and so on, and you can navigate through that way. So that might be a way to reduce scrolling.
Docs, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I thought that might have been what you did, Daryl.
And then also on a lot of these, let me see if one shows up, depending on the theme. A lot of things will have a link for Moodle docs for this page, but I'm not seeing it on your site here. Sometimes there'll be a link down here so that if you're like looking at a quiz or something, there'll be a link to the Moodle doc for this page, and it might take you over to something like this and take you directly to the particular activity that you're trying to look at, but maybe the theme doesn't do that. And then of course there's always YouTube, Moodle videos on YouTube. A lot of people put stuff there too. So anyway, if there's not any other questions, I'll go ahead and wrap up.